Hello. I'm Nicole J. LeBoeuf, sitting in tonight for Daniel Marcus and alongside Laura Blackwell. Daniel started Story Hour back in 2020 as a way to try to relieve the isolation of lockdown, offering this virtual campfire for us to gather around and tell stories to each other. The tradition has thrived ever since, and I, for one, am grateful for it. Another thing to be grateful for, Story Hour is made possible by a SIFWA Givers Grant. Thank you, SIFWA. Welcome back to those returning, and welcome to those joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Steve Toase and Katherine Quevedo. Steve Toase is reading for Green Ink's sponsored write for Macmillan Cancer Support. Green Ink's sponsored write brings together published authors and developing writers to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. Reflecting Macmillan's mission of quality of life for everyone affected by cancer, writers are sponsored for their time, not their word count, A world-exclusive anthology of material created in the sponsored write will be emailed to everyone who donates before the end of the writing day, arriving in inboxes 48 hours after it's written. You can learn more on their webpage, which has a rather long URL, which will be posted to the chat momentarily. Katherine Quevedo is reading for the Oblate Sisters of St. Francis de Sales. Since 1866, the Oblate Sisters have worked for, in the words of its now canonized founder, Sister Francis de Sales, the happiness of others. In addition to maintaining schools in the United States, the sisters work in Africa and Ecuador, serving the poorest of the poor. You can learn more at www.oblatesisters.org. If you are in a position to do so, please consider donating to either or both of tonight's featured nonprofits, which again are the Oblate Sisters of St. Francis de Sales and the Green Ink sponsored write. Check out their websites and spread the word about them so that more people are aware of their missions and can choose to support them. Important note tonight, the WGA strike is over, but the SAG-AFTRA one isn't. Story Hour stands with them. The Entertainment Community Fund, formerly the Actors Fund, provides a safety net for performing arts and entertainment professionals over their lifespan. That is entertainmentcommunity.org. If you're here on Zoom, feel free to chime in the text chat. It can get very lively. If you are joining us on Facebook, thank you, but please understand we may not see your messages right away as we are primarily here on the Zoom. Our first reader tonight is Steve Toase, who was born in North Yorkshire, England, and now lives in the Frankenwald, Germany.
Yeah.
Lovely. As well as Analog, his fiction has appeared in Nightmare Magazine, Shadows and Tall Trees 8, Three-Lobed Burning Eye, and Shimmer, amongst others. I miss Shimmer. His stories have been selected for Ellen Datlow's Best Horror of the Year series and Paula Garan's Year's Best Dark Fantasy and Horror. He also likes bonsai forests, old motorbikes, and vintage cocktails. His debut short story collection, To Drown in Dark Water, is published by Undertow Publications. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to Steve.
Good evening. So I'm going to start with two very short pieces of flash fiction, which came out of a project that we did a few years ago called Haunt, which was about hidden homelessness in my hometown in England, and the project grew out of my own experiences as a teen. So I'm going to read two very short pieces from that and then explain how they tie into the main story I'm reading. So the first piece I'm going to read is called The Lapwing Song. Sitting by the skirting, Kenny peeled away wallpaper, shaping the pieces into wings, feathering the torn edges with cold fingers. Behind the rips, the plaster was damp, the colour of panstick. With long fingernails, he scraped it free into small piles by his feet. Picking up the powder, he pressed it between his palms and shaped the compaction to a small body, and a tiny head. Into the powdered back, he pressed floral paper wings, watching them twitch to life in the draft. Dragging his hand down ceiling mould, he dotted eyes of spores onto the face, then touched the exposed brick beneath the windowsill and rouged the tiny bird's skin. Placed in the iron fireplace, the lapwing began to cough, but did not sing. The bird looked over at Kenny, and he started to give the creature his voice. First, he gave the lapwing his whispers, then his secrets, then all the stories from his childhood. With each word the lapwing took, it grew, a shudder of pale dust falling into the carpet. Each phrase it swallowed whole, swelling with the pressure. And as the bird swelled, pupils of mould turned to sapphire edged in gold, wallpaper wings fluttered to fine cluny lace. Rouged skin turned to delicate ruby feathers. And then the lapwing sang, and it sang of eloquences and springs, it sang of the genteel and the waters, it sang of tulips and tea blends, and when Kenny went to speak, the lapwing had taken all his words, leaving him no voice for his own story. So that's the first very little flash fiction. And the second one is called Kingdom of the Birds. So the first one is about how people who are homeless in certain places often lose their voices. Other people speak for them and create narratives, and often remove them from the community completely. This is another one which is inspired by my own experiences. It's called Kingdom of the Birds. And the opening is very appropriate for the moment. Staying up past midnight, we stitch the minutes into feathers, black as the jokes that keep us awake. When morning comes, we fit wings to our spines, disguising ourselves as crows and jackdaws to venture into the kingdom of the birds. The pigeons and seagulls ignore us, though our costumes are amateurish and do not let us take flight. The scavengers are too busy scraping up spilt doner meat from amongst the broken glass. We look around for doorsteps with 5 pints of milk to take just one, and search for skips with unspoilt food. We haven't eaten properly for a week. Our empty stomachs make us more like the birds than our childish wings ever will. So that's the second one. It's very short. So where this leads on to is one of the things that I think is really important. I wrote an article for Tor about this a few years ago, is how we give the homeless agency when we write about them, and when we write stories about them, which they often don't have. So the story I'm going to read, the protagonist is homeless, and while the conclusion may not seem it, it's all about the protagonist taking control for themselves. The story appeared in IZ Digital, Interzone Digital, earlier this year, and it's called Uprooted. By the year we became homeless, the forests were planted out across the oceans to try and keep up with demand. Vast floating mats of knotted roots anchored in place by thin tendrils aching for the water below. We watch them buckle and rise on the tides as the evictors threw our possessions into the street. Even as we tried to pick everything up, the arborists were already embedding seeds in the rooms and walls. We had to abandon most of our belongings. Behind us, they dropped childhood books and clothes into the mulcher. Leaves unfurled, the rate of growth accelerating as each one grasped sunlight from the cloudless sky. Within days, a stone would be soil, the pages fertilizer. It didn't matter to us. We were already homeless. My mother told me not to look back, but I did anyway. That was a long time ago now, and I still remember the feel of carpet under my feet, the texture of wallpaper under my hand, tracing the faces I found there. Now the only faces I find are in the bark of trees, scars in the wood that echo the scars in me. I haven't seen my own face in so long, but when I run my fingers across my cheek, I can feel the dirt that never washes away. That first summer we stayed on. Sorry, I'm going to pause. There is some parental death in this. There's some death of birds, and there is a description of physical abuse. I'm so sorry. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. I do apologise. It's 4 a.m. My brain's not quite working. That first summer we stayed on the streets of the logging towns. The compression mills pumping the stench of lignin in as they concentrated cellulose to make tools and weapons. My parents thought if we were near civilization, we would be safe, but no one is civil when you're homeless, waking up in the morning in blankets soaked through with beer and other people's urine. More than once, the humidity in the air stopped our drunken tormentors, setting fire to the cardboard that hid us from no one. Now I move often, trying to stay ahead of the logging crews and away from their villages. I watch my parents wither. Half a decade ago, I left them in the dirt. I wanted to burn them so no part would nourish the trees, but the smoke detectors amongst the branches would bring the fire squads and would bring death to me as well. I remember the feel of my father's skin against mine as I lifted him into the hollow soil, the weight of each stone I placed on his body, watching him compress the bloodless meat that was no longer him. 5 years ago now, and still I am alone between the trees. Only when my parents were dead, only when I was by myself, did I sense something hunting me. For the first 3 years, I stayed on the solid, in the parts of the forest anchored in rock and soil, but those were the most valuable, the most precious, where the wood was of the highest quality. And after too many near misses, I moved out into the waterborne forests. Even though the ground is thick enough to support the vast pines rising into the sky, the soil is thin, rising and falling at the whims of the tide, and the moon I can no longer see through the branches above. Something else other than water moves beneath my feet, and every night when I sleep in a new place, I hear its scarred hide scrape against the roots dangling into the seawater. After the first year, my parents took us to the shelters set up for the homeless by the arborists, a way of appearing to care about those they evicted. Each place had its own rules, what time you had to leave in the morning, what time you had to be waiting by the locked door in the evening to stand a chance of getting a bed. There were never enough beds. The first time the shelter couldn't take us all, my parents insisted I go in alone. Afterwards, I couldn't tell them what happened in that vast room filled with camp beds and frets. I never let them send me in alone again. I try not to dream anymore. Those nighttime stories soundtracked by boots against bone and my dad's broken arm that never quite healed because no clinic would treat rough sleepers. Sometimes I hear them when I'm awake too, in the rattle of the leaves on the branches and the rain cascading down the bark to rivulet across my skin like so many scars no one else can see. Sometimes I barely hear them over the sound of my hunter. When I smell salt on the air, I know the hunter is close, and I break camp heading further and further into the forest. I dare not return to solid ground. I know how vast my pursuer is. I know as they stretch to devour me, they leave muscle and bone beneath the ground. To retreat is to walk above them. To return is to sacrifice myself. I keep on running. I wonder if the hunter lays claim to all the dead below the forest floor. If it compresses their flesh into its own to stretch further, if the sodden corpses of my father and my mother have been fused into the hunter's muscle, if their knowledge of me remained within their mold-covered skulls, and even now the hunter is learning how to corner me in the vast forests that never end. I sleep and see the hunter below me, oaks and lime trees anchored into its muscle, their root nerves that extend the hunter's senses into the canopy itself. When I awake, I avoid brushing against the bark in case it senses my presence. I envy the anchorage I dream for my pursuer. I feel the forest floor undulate beneath my feet. Some places are thinner, eroded by the constant ebb and flow of the hidden tide. If I put my face to the rotten leaves, I hear the water churn, and in the distance, the hunter's constant approach that will eventually overtake me. Maybe The ocean itself conjured this unseen vengeance for the disrespect of having trees embedded above, hiding the shimmer and glisten of the waves. Yet seas change throughout the history of the world, drying up to turn their populations to stone. Maybe I will fall through the thin places to turn to stone in a stomach too vast for me to comprehend. For now, the threat is easy to stay in front of, if I keep moving. The forest is silent. The wind clatters the leaves, but nothing lives here, apart from the homeless, apart from people like me. There are no badgers churning the soil. The timber is too valuable, the soil too thin and precious. I learned to hide well. When I find the bird fallen on the forest path, I'm unsure what to do. I think it's a ghost, a memory of mine, or a memory carried by the forests. The creature is black feathered with grey and white below the wings. I do not know the species, and at least to start with, I do not know if it is alive or dead. The next day I find another, this one hollowed out, skull emptied by death. I think about carrying it with me. Instead, I scoop out soil to place the bones in the ground in the same way I did with my mother and father. This world has killed the bird. Surely it deserves the same respect, the same pointless ritual that means nothing to anyone but me. Later at night, I wake to the sound of the water below me, trying to find sight of the moon, and I wonder if the hunter is not a creation of the depths, but a blessing I have called to myself. Maybe when I covered my parents with forest dirt, the land accepted a sacrifice and manifested as my pursuer. Maybe the hunter is not seeking me to render me into paste, but grace me for leaving offerings to its greatness. My food is running low. The arborists keep the forest sterile of anything but trees, any nutrients not used to grow timber considered wasted. I circle around, following a path I know will lead to a camp stocked with food in case an arborist crew find themselves unable to return to their town. The boundary fence is high, an alarm cord running around the top, but I see no lights within and hear no activity. The arborists are never quiet. They have no need to be. Within the woods, they are the only predators, but they still fear the forest as if the woods will turn on them and the roots will crush them to dust in their sleep. I know the alarm will only be armed if they are within and scale the wall easily. Inside, the door is open and I go in, opening the food store at the back of a single room. What little I find inside is already rotted, softened and sprouting forests of its own. I trim and trim and trim to try and leave something edible, but when I am finished, there is nothing. I consider eating the mold-covered rusts anyway, but I have seen the dancing and madness that is hidden within the spored bread and have no wish to jig myself to starvation. On the wall is a map showing how far to the nearest logging town. I tear it free and tell myself I will go and find food there. I only need to beg on the streets long enough to fill my stomach. Still, the fear is hard baked into my bones, and I know that my life is more at risk surrounded by houses and by trees. The path is marked with bodies slumped against bark, their skins slack, the cut marks across their throat dulled by the humidity. Signs hang around their necks, ink too smeared to read. I start to walk away, then turn back and dig 3 holes in the leaf litter, one for each body. Maybe if I dedicate these deaths to the hunter, then it will accept my offering and turn from me for other quarry. Maybe its appetites will be too vast and I will be too small for the hunter to notice anymore. I search their clothes for anything worth salvaging. There is nothing, and I lower them into the dirt. The logging town is not one I have visited before. The buildings constructed on a vast raft so they are not torn apart by the ebb and flow of the sea. On the streets, all is noise and scent, the sawmills dividing and dividing and dividing. I see other homeless on the streets, not too emaciated. Maybe the arborists in the town are generous. I do not get my hopes up. I've passed through other settlements where the homeless are well fed, and when I found out how they earn their money, I have left. Below the sound of the compression plants, I hear the hunter. When I rest, it rests. I wonder why it is in no rush to devour me. Maybe in its pursuit, the hunter has become wary of people, but this does not make sense. Every day it grows stronger on the bodies it finds amongst the roots. I feel it buck against the land above its vast spine. The hunter fears no one. The workday is ending. I find a shop doorway and nestle myself against a smeared glass. Tomorrow I will find food. I do not know what time they attack me. I sleep light, but do not wake before the first baton hits me. There is no way to escape the violence. Each percussion knocks me from my feet, but I continue to drag myself upright. They wear masks, not to hide their faces, because who will censor them? They see me as infectious, as a human plague, as if homelessness was contagious. As the blows continue, I go inside myself. Listen to the stories my dad once told me as he sat on the edge of my bed, turning the pages. I play songs to myself, though the tunes are vague because I love the words more. As the blows knock me to the floor for the final time, I recite the litany that keeps fear distance, but it is hard to make it work as the bruises bloom. In the morning, they come back and leave me a packet of food as if paying me for my entertainment. I recognise them by their boots, by the smears of blood on the toe caps. I take the bag and leave, speaking to no one. That night, I see the hunter for the first time, its skeleton outside its flesh, the bone infested with coral and limpets. When the hunter twists to feast, it tears away from the roots embedded into its muscle, collapsing the canopy above. And when I wake, I am surrounded by fallen trees. The hunter is showing its disgust for the land above. I do not know if it will withdraw to the depths of the sea or tear the world apart. The arborists shackle me, reluctant to slit my throat in front of a camera crew that accompany them. Damaging the forest is a capital crime. Most found guilty never make it to a courtroom and die in the silence of the forests. I will not have that anonymous relief. I will be tried and recorded and feel the friction of the rope against my neck instead of the rust of a blade against my throat. They carry me back to the vehicle and load me into the back, and there, far from the gaze of the cameras, they show me once more I am not human. The cell is small, little bigger than the space that I occupy in the world. I remember the graves I dug for my parents, hugged close by the soil until the hunter found them, blending them together into its scarred hide. I want to be part of something bigger. I want to be beyond myself. I want to be lost within that muscle and flesh that stretches beneath the forest. In my cell, I sing to the hunter and call it to me. The trial is held in an arborist office on the edge of town. I notice the cameras and wonder who is watching on the other side, whether those glass lenses are the eyes of a hunter waiting for the right moment to intervene. There is no jury, and when I speak, my words are dismissed. When I sing to the still hidden hunter, they gag me. Beneath our feet, the floor buckles, and despite the cloth against my tongue, I smile. Outside the smeared windows, I see the rope swing, and I wonder if it will swing so freely when my weight is added to it. They tell me a day must pass until they kill me, a day for appeals, a day for new evidence. They know as well as I do none will appear. Back in the cell, they cut the cloth from my mouth, and I call to the hunter once more. I know it has found me, the scent of salt in the air, the way the cell floor twists and turns. There is a full moon. I add my voice to the light. I stamp my feet to call the hunter to the surface. Daylight comes, and I am still alone. The arborists come for me with the first light. They do not bother to dress me or ease my wounds. With my hands tied, they lead me into the square. I wonder if they will turn my body to mulch. As we walk, I start to sing to the hunter once more. They do not stop me, thinking it is a madness of grieving my own death. I hear the hunter close, calling to me in the voices of my mother and father. I sing louder and stamp my feet as I walk. Beneath the gallows, they slip the rope around my neck. Loose fibers tickle my neck, and I laugh. I might as well laugh now before I cannot. There is no drop and snap. Instead, I will be hauled into the air and slowly blink myself away. They start to lift me, and my throat rests forward on the rope. I whisper my plea once because I have no voice left to do more. The hunter erupts through the gathered crowd. Vast heads scattering them aside. Its teeth are calcified dead, bodies encased in yellowed mineral. I see faces in the enamel as it gnaws through the arborists, swallowing the severed parts. Buildings become caught on its exoskeleton, and when it twists, houses collapse, sawmills falling into the hole left by its ascension. Blind and vast, it feasts, enveloping prey in muscle and grinding them along the forest floor beyond the town. I do not expect salvation, and as I choke, I watch the hunter turn toward me. I wonder if it knows I called it forth. I wonder if it knows that I worshipped it even as I feared its arrival. I wonder what it will feel like to be digested. With the side of its vast head, the hunter nudges me to the floor. Slow and precise, it hooks the severed rope between broken teeth. I know I will not survive the day, but I will die in the stomach of my God. It opens its mouth wide, and hands still bound behind my back, I walk across its tongue and down into the stomach toward an afterlife embedded in the salt-soaked flesh of a one who has hunted me for so long. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for that. It is the custom at Story Hour to take a breath between stories to let the first one settle into our bones. And I think we need that very much right now. That was amazing. Thank you very much, Steve. Our next reader, Katherine Quevedo, was born and raised near Portland, Oregon, where she works as an analyst and lives with her husband and 2 sons. Her fiction has appeared in or is forthcoming in Nightmare Magazine, Fireside Magazine, On Spec, Flame Tree Publishing's Christmas Gothic Short Stories, Factor 4 Magazine, Latina Lit, and elsewhere. Her mini chapbook of poetry, The Inca Weaver's Tales, is part of the new Cosmology series from Sword and Kettle Press. Find her at www.katherinequevedo.com. Over to you, Katherine.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here. I'm going to read 2 pieces that are somewhat similar theme to each other. I'm going to start with my story, Until It Has Your Reflection, from Nightmare Magazine. I hold the crayon to the mirror, ready to swipe it across my reflection's neck, just as my husband, Tomas, instructed. Make a quick horizontal line, then break the crayon against the glass. Snap it like you would your reflection's neck. I've chosen the shade closest to my skin tone because it feels fitting for the occasion. The brown that I'd had to explain to our kindergartner was not the skin color crayon. Not everyone has skin as dark as ours, and some have darker. I imagine similar conversations in other households about other crayons. Now I'm just stalling. My mirror self's face shows more signs of the blurring. Hazy eyes, smudged lips. Still a face for now, and doesn't that count for something? My fingers quiver around the crayon. 2 days prior. 2 days before my face will start morphing into a low-resolution facsimile of myself. Tomas and I stood at the bathroom counter getting ready for the day. For some reason, he had taken it upon himself to clean the mirror last night while I put Penelope to bed. He'd hardly spoken a word since. He spread shaving cream over his face and stared at his reflection, studied it, his bloodshot eyes vacillating between fear and longing from behind his glasses. He'd done a sloppy job, smearing the bulb of his nose with white foam. He looked like our daughter when she bites into a cupcake and gets frosting all over. He brought his razor up to his neck with a strange, shuddering breath. A moment later, he nicked his chin, but didn't seem to notice, as if the act of shaving took more out of him than an actual cut. "You're bleeding," I mumbled around my toothbrush. He dropped his gaze to his sink for a moment, then fetched some tissue and pressed it to the cut. "I'm going to grow out my beard." I spit into the sink. "You haven't done that since Penelope was a baby." He didn't reply, just studied his chin in the mirror, watching the tissue bloom red. "Your facial hair better not hide your dimples." He ignored me. He ignored his contact lenses. He washed his face off and left. The sweet fragrance of his shaving cream lingered like a specter. The next day, I caught Tomas scribbling away at the art table with some of Penelope's markers. Normally, he'd do anything to get out of coloring with her. Now he was doing it without her while she watched a movie in the family room. Awkward self-portraits from the look of it, with a wide range of facial expressions. A cartoony Tomas smiling, frowning, confused or apologetic, I couldn't tell which, and his current masterpiece, puffing his cheeks out and perhaps whistling. He paused to shove his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Alicia, can I ask you something?" I cocked my head. "Of course." "How do I look to you?" I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "Like you've taken a very sudden interest in art." He glanced up at me, but nothing noticeably different physically. I checked him over, this curious husband of mine with the faintest signs of dad bod and those awesome dimples. "Nothing besides that stubble you're growing." Tears gleamed in the corners of his eyes. "Tomas, what's going on? What's bothering you?" He shot me a pointed look, as if I should already know the answer. "You ever get the feeling something wants to drag you away?" A sudden shiver made me jerk up from the doorframe, putting my full weight on my feet. "What do you mean? Drag me where exactly?" "Wherever it thinks you belong, wherever it thinks your home should be." I snorted. "We both grew up right here." "It's just, I got this feeling a few days ago, this freezing numbness, like someone had dropped an ice cube down my back, and this weird sensation like somebody wanted me gone." He fidgeted with the marker. Then I noticed my face getting blurry in the mirror. I hugged my ribs. "Mi cariño, you're freaking me out." "So you haven't felt an icy, dragging away feeling?" I shook my head, speechless. Relief covered his face. "Good, it doesn't have your reflection yet." He offered me a chocolate brown marker, the color of his eyes, and mine and Penelope's. I sank onto a chair next to him, unsure of what to draw or how to keep up appearances around him, but unwilling to pursue the topic. I didn't want to question my husband's sanity. I settled for sketching my own face in silence, like him. I had this sense now of unwelcomeness, but it had to be because he'd put the idea in my mind. It must be. I felt off the whole next day, like in grade school when a friend would tickle my spine while reciting a rhyme to give me the shiveries. It didn't help when Penelope approached me a little before bedtime for assistance with the scissors. "At this hour?" I asked. "It's for science." She resembled her daddy so much, melting my heart with those puppy dog eyes, a button version of his nose, his dimples. "Fine, we can have a little later bedtime than usual. What supplies do we need?" Her kindergarten class was studying light. Yesterday, she'd drawn herself in crayon with a dotted outline shape lying behind her. Supposed to be her shadow, but it looked too much like the chalk outline of a corpse to me. I hadn't said anything. Today, I helped her cut out a printout of a pointing hand, tape it sticking upward to a piece of paper like an easel, and find a flashlight. We turned off the lights, and she angled the beam at the hand from different points around the room. Each time, the dark, stretching outline of a pointing finger seemed to seek me out. My skin crawled as the shape inched along the carpet, closer and closer, thrown in stark relief against the only light in the room. It doesn't have your reflection yet. Are you okay without your nightlight for this, mijita? She giggled and turned the flashlight up to her neck, illuminating her version of Daddy's strong chin. Later, after we cleaned up the science project and moved into her bathroom to brush her teeth, she pointed to her mouth. I have a wiggly tooth. I tried moving that tiny bead of an incisor. Doesn't seem loose to me, not yet anyway. She frowned Tomas's frown. It is too. I placed a hand on her shoulder, so small and bony beneath her pajamas. I believe you. You can feel it before we see it, that's all. You'll have a new smile in no time. I want the tooth fairy to come. Patience, mijita. How could she sleep knowing a mysterious being wanted to invade our home to claim a part of her? Again, that icy chill overtook me. I half expected to see my breath puffing right there in her bathroom. I caught my eye in the mirror. I saw it, the first signs of smudging, as though I needed glasses, but only to see myself. Everything else remained in sharp focus. The shower curtain behind me, each ring holding it up, my pajamas laying atop my own shoulders. It looked as if the mirror were fogging, but only over the part with my head. The distortion followed me as I moved, even after I wiped the surface with my sleeve. I completed Penelope's bedtime as fast as I could and hurried toward the living room. In all the hubbub with the science experiment, I'd forgotten to close the entryway blinds. The combination of darkness outside and light inside the house made my smudgy reflection leer at me from the window. As I approached it, I avoided looking too long at myself, or rather at that version of me superimposed onto the dark vision of the outside like a wandering spirit. I dealt with the blinds and dashed out of the foyer, my hands clammy and shaking. I found Tomas at the art table making more of those portraits. I know what you were talking about yesterday, I said. I believe you. Through the lenses of his glasses, he teared up as though he'd longed for those words and thought they'd never come. Thank you. He swallowed to steady his voice. Here's all you need to do. I'd never before trusted anyone who said that to me. I did some research, he continued, online, not helping. He explained the crayon ritual, how anyone had ever figured out how to draw a line of crayon across their reflection's neck and break the crayon, I couldn't imagine. But there's a price, he added. I pursed my lips and gestured for him to get to the point. You're going to lose your head. Just tell me, I can handle it. No, I mean, that's what happens. You lose your head. Well, it's still there, but you can't see it anymore. Everyone else can, but for you, it's missing from your reflection, your shadow, even in photos. You know that creepy photo in Back to the Future where his siblings lose their body parts? My reflection looks like that for me. My head is gone. I recalled the part of the movie he was talking about, and my arm hair stood on end. What he said should have sounded made up, but now I had the shiveries for real. I couldn't stop thinking of frostbite and purple limbs fading into nothingness and icy crystals blurring across a window and the inkling of a malevolence wanting to claim my reflection for itself and cast me out somewhere unknown and unreachable. This explained Tomas's recent bizarre behavior. Pick a crayon, he said. I wish I were brave enough to be with you when you do it, but I'm not. His voice broke at the end. Just promise me you'll go through with it, he whispered. What if someone doesn't do the ritual? What happens if it gets them? He rose from the table and took my face in both his hands, his gentle fingers warming my cheeks. I drank in his caring gaze, as though he'd finally woken from a bad dream and realized I was there in bed beside him. No one wants to find out. I remembered Penelope's science experiment, the pointing shadow crawling across the carpet, distorted and stretching across the fibers toward me, how I'd squirmed and leaned away from it, while trying to hide my discomfort from her. How I wouldn't have let it touch me, even if she did notice. How it had sought me out with accusatory precision. To our mammalian brains, wasn't the unknown always worse than the known, even if that meant losing one's head? As strange as Tomas had been acting these past days, I trusted him. Less than a week until it has your reflection, Alicia. Do it tonight and make it fast. I picked up my crayon of choice and met his gaze, the same bold, earthy, magnificent, warm brown. Now I swiped the crayon straight across my mirrored neck, the point blunting into a dark smudge on the glass like my reflection's face. The malevolence rushes toward me from somewhere far away, a gust closing in, a burst of biting cold. How close? It must sense my resistance. I press harder, the crayon bows, the evil force charges, a knot tightens my shoulder blades, goosebumps spring up across my nape and down my arms. A flash of glacier blue in the mirror. Segmented limbs or arms or spiny teeth slap at the glass, grasping, rushing my reflection. Snap. The crayon crumples into two halves, a wrinkled joint of paper connecting them. That awful presence dissipates. Tomas never warned me I'd see it. Now a new terror replaces it, my headless visage in the glass. My stomach clenches at the wrongness. The neck doesn't end in a clean line, but blurs up past the crayon mark into nothing. I tilt forward, staring at the fuzziness, where it feels like I should see a cross-section of my own throat. My forehead hits cold glass. I turn away and spot my shadow across the bathroom wall, my decapitated silhouette. No escape. In our world of selfies, video meetings, cameras and screens everywhere, I'll never see my face again. From now on, Tomas will have to tell me if I have food in my teeth, apply my makeup, inform me when I'm overdue for a haircut. I'll help him trim his beard. Maybe someday I'll find tenderness in having to rely on another for so much. Right now, though, hot tears spill down my invisible cheeks without any of the warmth of his caress. For the first time, I hope Penelope grows to look more like me than Tomas as time goes on. The muscles around my mouth tighten and quiver. At least I'll never have to see myself cry. And then I'm going to finish up with a story called Tree Eyes, and this one is from Frost Zone Zine. Poor little Jackson struggles with his words as I tuck him in and reach for the light switch. Mommy, he shakes his head. His eyes swim. Better keep the light on a little longer. The way he stares across his bedroom at the closet doors must be an imagined monster lurking inside. Don't worry, buddy, it's all right. I walk over to the closet, slide the wooden doors wide open, and make a show of investigating the interior. Just bins of toys on one side and clothes on the other, all with picture labels on them, so he can learn where things go. No big deal. I close everything back up and flash him the reassuring smile that every monster outsmarting parent has mastered. Until I see the worry lingering on Jackson's face. It's fear, really. My smile fades. I haven't solved the root cause disrupting our otherwise unfailing bedtime routine. I do not like the tree eyes, he says, crafting each word deliberately. Wow, that's got to be the biggest sentence I've heard him string together yet. He's really motivated to get his point across. He gestures toward the closet, slides off his big kid bed, and follows his outstretched finger with timid steps until he's merely touching one of the double doors. His hand shoots out to tap a large knot in the wood surface. Then he turns and bolts back to his bed. He grabs the nearest teddy and squeezes it against his chest, his eyes as big and round as the bear's. I study the closet doors and notice for the first time the knots scattered across them in wavy, bulbous outlines. They look like alien heads, or, I have to admit, eyes. And not the cute, glassy eyes of my son's stuffed animals. These wood ones seem to move with the grain's haphazard patterns, watching you as you watch them. My neck prickles. It's okay, I say, totally to my son. I'm about to comfort him with the fact that he'll have his nightlight on when I realize that it'll only let him see the tree eyes in dimmer light. That's a sight even I don't want to see. Aren't monsters supposed to hide behind doors? I didn't expect to have to protect him from the doors themselves. They're wedged onto their tracks pretty tight, and I'm not that handy. I know, I say, we'll cover them up. He looks skeptical, but he follows me out to the kitchen junk drawer for a roll of tape and some scratch paper. Back in his room, I make quick work of those doors. I cast each hideous, accusing eye one last glance before sealing it behind a rectangle of plain white cardstock. I rush through the process because we're already running late on Jackson's bedtime, and certainly not because I'm a grown woman who shouldn't feel nervous in my own child's bedroom at night. I tuck Jackson in with forced calm and avoid looking at the closet anymore, because the tree eyes have been blindfolded, but not blinded. I have so little faith in my own solution. When I exit his room, it feels like I'm retreating. Half an hour later, I tiptoe toward my son's bedroom and press my ear to the crack, where each night I set the door against the frame. I listen for his steady breathing. Good. The paper covers have worked and allowed him to fall asleep. I turn to go, when a sudden fluttering from inside the room turns my blood cold. It sounds like a deck of cards thrown carelessly in a game of 52 pickup. The papers have fallen, more than one, probably all of them, as if they'd waited for me to bear witness. My back presses against the hallway wall as I sink to my haunches, hands cradling my temples. My precious babe slumbers unsuspecting while all those tree eyes watch him. I'm too weak to go in there. Besides, I can't protect him. I can't protect him. They've invaded one of our most intimate spaces. They stare with cruel, bloodshot insomnia, and they'll wait and watch and hover through the daytime haze, too. I pull myself back to my feet. I can't protect him tonight. But first thing tomorrow, I'll get a can of paint. After all, that wood color always looked so drab. I just never realized until now it always looked. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, that last line. Wow. Thank you, both of you. I know Daniel often comments on how well the stories go together, and I think we saw some themes tonight above and beyond.
I had
Go
no
ahead.
idea about the trees. I did think that these two writers would read very well together, but the trees were a complete surprise.
There's such vividly realized detail in the long pieces, in the protagonist's meaningful self-annihilation, I guess, surrounded by all these glorious images that I know I'm going to be seeing at 3:00 at night tonight. Well, next week, our readers are Michael Haynes and A.C. Wise, though I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com the day of for any announcements or changes. Storyhour2020.com is also your place to learn about upcoming authors, and you can watch any programs you may have missed at the Story Hour page on Facebook, also linked from that URL. Steve and Katherine, thank you for joining us and sharing your stories. Thank you very much to our founder, Daniel Marcus, and to Laura Blackwell for inviting me in tonight. And thank you, all of you, for joining us in spinning the fictive dream. Good night from Story Hour.
Before I say good night, I'd just like to say thank you to our wonderful Nicole J. LeBoeuf, who has been a longtime Story Hour reader, watcher, and sometimes hall monitor, and has finally stepped out to the front to let me run tech tonight. Worked very smoothly. Thank you for bringing your calm presence tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. This has been a lovely experience. You know where to find me if you need guest hosting again.
Oh, yes.
Now I'm getting flustered.
Thank you all. Good night.